This is the best moments of the BBQ Central Show in 10 minutes or less. Ever wish you could re-listen to your favorite interview or segment? Do you enjoy hearing older shows for the first time in years? Then the best moments of the BBQ Central Show in 10 minutes or less is just what you need. Thanks for listening and enjoy the show.
Welcome, everyone. Like the big voice said, it is the best moments of the BBQ Central Show in 10 minutes or less. And today I am taking you back to October 20th of 2015. Greg has a great visit with Mr. Steven Raichlen. This is a doubleheader. Both segments are Steven Raichlen. Steven is talking about his induction into the Hall of Fame, as well as the great cooking and grilling stuff that Steven is famous for. So here's Greg's visit from October 20th, 2015 with Mr. Steven Raichlen.
Third Tuesday of the month guest here on this show. We go ahead and race over the hotline and welcome in Steven Raichlen. Steven, how are you, buddy?
Great. How about you, Greg?
Doing absolutely fabulous, Steven. Always appreciate the time to give the show, and a couple good things to get into this evening. You know, when we talked last month leading into this particular segment, we ended with a little bit of a lead up or a hype up to the American Royal 2015 this year. That has since come and gone. So you've had a couple weeks away from it. And I wonder, as somebody who isn't going there to necessarily cook in the invitational or the open side, and we've had a massive recount on this show with all those guys that won out there, as a spectator and most importantly as going into the 2015 Hall of Fame, I'm interested to get your thoughts on the whole situation out there. You know, they moved from storied location in Stockyards out to Arrowhead Stadium, and there was a lot of lead-up controversy to that, but all things seem to be going well. So, you know, from a logistics sense, and when did you get there, and how long did you stay, just like the whole American Royal recap from your point of view?
Well, the American Royal weekend was fantastic. My time there was limited, unfortunately, but I did, courtesy of the VIP treatment they gave me, including a golf cart and a driver, managed to see the entire thing, visit with a lot of teams, both in the professional and the amateur section. And I got to tell you, I think this move out to the stadium is fantastic. There is so much space. This year they had 618, count them, 618 teams. That number's only going to grow. This is a broad, wide open space, easily accessible. You know, obviously there were a few growing pains in the logistics this year, but I think it is a great move for Kansas City, and it is a great move for barbecue.
When you're going around the particular locations, see all the teams get ready, what kind of a reception do you get? I mean, does everybody know you? Do like a handful of people kind of stop you, and then other people go, "Hey, that guy kind of looks familiar. I'm just kind of interested in you know how you trend over from team to team."
Well, like I told my wife on the phone, these are my people, and and particularly with the Hall of Fame award this year, I was very warmly received everywhere I went. Lots of high Steves. I mean, I get that at airports, and I have more and more since Project Smoke started airing this summer. But this is the epicenter of my constituency.
All right, Steven. So, in regards to the Hall of Fame situation itself, who kind of talked you in, and when you had time to go ahead and address the audience and the rest of the Hall of Famers, you don't have to recount the whole speech, of course, but some of the things that you hit on during in the acceptance.
Well, first of all, it was an enormous honor, and I'm extremely proud. And actually, they offered it to me last year, but the induction ceremony fell over Yom Kippur, which is the holiest holiday in the Jewish calendar last year, so I could not go to Kansas City for that. But this year, I went. My co-inductees were Ed Fisher, founder of Big Green Egg, and Paul Kirk, the great Kansas City barbecue master. So I was in great company. I kept sort of pinching myself because I thought, you go through life. I have a degree in French literature. I mean, I figured I'd be a college professor. And the odd turn, this was an award that I never, ever, ever in my wildest dreams thought I would get. And then, but here it is, however many years later, and it was, it was just, it was such a deep, touching, and honoring acknowledgement of the work I've done in barbecue. Awesome, moving experience. So, my whole thing in life is the more you give, the more you get. It's that old Beatles line, and in the end, the love, what is it? The love you get is equal to the love you give, or something like that. The love you make is equal to the love you take, and in the end, the love you take is equal to the love you make. Yeah. So, to me, that means you just give as much as you can. So, in my acceptance speech, I kind of, I talked a little bit about what an unlikely recipient I was, because unlike most people at the Royal, I did not grow up in the barbecue tradition. There were no smokers. I didn't even know what real barbecue was until I was in my 20s. So in my speech, I talked about 10 things I've learned in my 20 years in barbecue. And that acceptance speech is actually up on my website, barbecuebible.com. But so I talked about, sort of one thing I learned is how ancient barbecue was and how important it was in the development of both the human species and human culture. I talked about how barbecue is some of the last truly local food that we have. And in an age where there's a Starbucks on virtually every street corner, fast food has proliferated like crazy. And even the high-end chefs like the Thomas Kellers and the Mario Batalis, have empires with restaurants all over the world. Barbecue really is some of the last truly local food that we have, and I think that's really important. Even in a place like Kansas City, where all four of what are considered the big, the big foods, ribs, brisket, pork shoulder, and chicken, they're all part of Kansas City barbecue. So I thought it was very appropriate to accept the award there. I talked about kind of what barbecue means around the world and what foods constitute barbecue in other cultures, highlighting sheep's intestines in Uruguay, chicken blood in the Philippines, and nori seaweed in Korea. I would have mentioned one of Japan's national dishes, grilled bean curd, but with miso barbecue sauce. But with that crowd, I didn't dare quite utter the word tofu. I talked about how barbecue is teamwork, and I gave a big nod to my wife, who certainly everything good that's happened in my career has happened thanks to my wife. I talked about, and I think this is a really important message, nobody eats barbecue alone. It's really all about community, sharing the food, sharing the love. And then I did get on my soapbox and sort of try and leave people with a message for what I think is important for the future. And for me, that is a close, hard look at the quality of the ingredients, trying to go for grass-fed beef, for heritage pork, for organic chicken, for organic produce, and really being aware of some of the monstrosities that happen in the way that food is mass-produced in this country. And 20 years ago, you talked to pit masters, it was all about the pit and techniques. Well, the new generation really cares about how the food is raised. For me, the soundbite is, how your food is raised matters as much as how you smoke it. And I was really gratified to get a big round of applause for that. So I think that things are changing.
Stephen, before we move on with a little bit more insight into the Hall of Fame ceremony, you touched on something I want to ask you about. It seems that, as you said before, it was, how you cook it. Now it's, let's go ahead and put a focus on how it's raised and how it's fed and all the good stuff that you're talking about. But inevitably in business and in finding people that distribute, they want to take advantage of people. So I think it's important that if people want to make that change or really kind of live by what you're talking about, that they're able to source people that are legitimate. So do you have any suggestions on how to kind of weed through the pretenders and the fakers, the people are just looking to make a buck, and find the real people that are kind of living by what you're talking about?
Well, super great question. So on the local level, I mean, in general, if you shop at farmers markets, you got a much better crack at getting something pure and wholesome, and you're also supporting your local farmers and cattlemen. On the national level, because let's face it, I mean, we all, the supermarket is a part of most of our lives. I think Whole Foods does a really good job of providing organic food, of looking for humanely raised animals. I shop there often. I look for the words organic. Another point that I make that runs very counter to the way most Americans think is I'm very much a seasonal guy, and I am happy not to eat salmon for 9 months a year if I can get local wild salmon for 3 months a year. Ditto for vegetables that are out of season. I love seasonality, and I love scarcity. I think as a nation we've come to expect everything we want, anytime we want.
To put in your request for a future show, please contact John Solberg via email at johnjon@thebbqcentralshow.com.
Stephen Reichel joining us here on the show, barbecuebible.com and projectsmoke.org, some websites to check them out. Go ahead and finish that thought, Stephen.
The other thing I just wanted to say is that we cannot trust agribusiness and the industrial food complex to do the right thing, but because they have a conscience. It's only when we demand better ingredients, when we demand more humanely raised ingredients, that we will get it. And for your listeners, and I know I'm probably on a soapbox that many people in the barbecue world don't care about, but watch a film like Food Inc., and that'll really open your eyes about kind of where a lot of our food comes from.
Stephen, a couple other of the Hall of Fame inductees that you mentioned. One was Paul Kirk, who is obviously in the lore of competition barbecue and maybe a little bit of book writing, certainly well-deserved to be in there. And Ray Lampe, Dr. Barbecue, a couple weeks ago kind of talked about him a little bit. But another guy that I wanted to ask you about, and I don't know how much you know about him, but as far as being into the Hall of Fame and people who deserve, and who's to say who deserves, I guess, but when I look at a business guy, when I look at Ed Fisher of Big Green Egg, here's a guy who has been wildly successful with this particular brand of cooker. It's a ceramic cooker that had come over from the Orient that he had found back in the military and decided, hey, what a great cooker. I'm going to bring it over here. And boom, it's wildly erupted and very popular. And I think to a point he has turned his particular brand into the Kleenex, if you will, of ceramic-style cookers. You say Kleenex, but it's really facial tissue. You say Big Green Egg. Everybody thinks of all kinds of different ceramic cookers. So on that end, I think it's an absolute wild success. In your eyes, you're a businessman, and you like to succeed in markets that you're in. What does Ed Fisher and I guess the Big Green Egg mean to you?
Well, first of all, I'm glad you used the words wildly successful and not overnight success. What I admire the most in a guy like Ed Fisher is his tenacity, his perseverance, his belief in his product. Because believe me, if egg is all anybody talks about now, the Big Green Egg, I guarantee you there were 20 or 30 years of his business when almost nobody bought eggs or knew what they were. But he believed, he persevered. And I guarantee you almost any overnight success took a lot of struggle, a lot of belief, a lot of years when nothing happened.
And this is a product that I don't know if you own any, but you certainly are very used to using. Right?
I own many eggs. I use them. It's a fantastic product. And I think the egg has actually been very responsible for bringing what I would call a lot of mainstream grillers into the world of barbecue and smoking.
What I like about the egg here, and certainly this isn't a planned love fest for Big Green Egg, but when people are asking me what kind of a pit or what kind of a grill should I look at, certainly we discuss, some of the major factors when I'm counseling somebody, which is, how big is your family? What are the situations that you might grill up to people-wise? I cook, for me, it's like I cook for 5 usually, but I can gust up to 25 to 50 people depending. So, take that into account. But the other thing is budget. And if the budget's right, Or if we're trending and I can push somebody up, I always recommend Big Green Egg because to me, I call it the hybrid cooker, 2 cookers in one. You have the low and slow capabilities, which you're obviously very familiar with, but then you also have the super high heat ability to do steaks. So if you can, muster the savings book, go ahead and buy one of those. And as I say, buy the best and only cry once, right?
Greg, I couldn't agree with you more. I always recommend to people to buy more grill than you think you need so you can grow into it.
Stephen Reichlin joining us here on the show. ProjectSmoke.org is the television show, and BarbecueBible.com, obviously, his normal haunt, if you want to check him out here while we're talking. Let's transition a little bit, Stephen, with the time we have left. We are well into October, really going into November very quickly here over the next week or so. Again, we pull back from what you said recently in the show here as far as seasonality. Of course, I never want to have you on to not ask you about what you're cooking or what you into. And I saw a blog post of yours recently that said 2 of my favorite things, apple and crisp. And, of course, when it's Stephen Reichlin, you know it's going outside.
Yeah, absolutely. There is something about wood smoke that will take a dessert, and especially a fruit dessert, and it will... it's a little bit like smoke. I call wood smoke the umami of barbecue, and umami is that 5th taste that has the ability to make things, that sort of makes things like you're tasting them in Technicolor. And when you add a whiff of wood smoke to an apple crisp, and my latest iteration, the one we do on Project Smoke, also involves bacon and bourbon. It's just you're taking a commonplace dessert and you're making it absolutely extraordinary, otherworldly, and this is what wood smoke does.
All right, so talk to me about the recipe itself. If people want to give it a try here over this coming weekend, things that they're going to need, and a little bit of the high level stuff.
Cast iron skillet in which you brown the bacon. Don't pour off too much of the bacon fat. The filling, it's a standard, apple, a little bit of flour for thickener, a little brown sugar for sweetness, grated lemon zest, super important. I fold the bacon back in. I fold the bourbon back in. The top is your basic crisp, which I started doing because I like crisps, and also I'm too lazy to make pie dough for apple pie. Ginger snap cookies or graham cracker crumbs or shortbread crumbs, flour, brown sugar, butter, cut in using a food processor or 2 knives. That goes on top. Indirect grilling, handful of apple wood. It's just incredible. By the way, you asked me about what I'm grilling, and this is a segue away from apples, but I just got to tell you about something I made last night.
Yeah.
So we got some nice wild coho salmon. And I thought I would plank it last night with a miso barbecue sauce. And but what I did is, the common lure is you soak the cedar plank, and that way it releases all the cedar steam. But what I did is I charred the cedar plank, turned it over so the fish went on the charred plank to kind of get some intrinsic smoke. And then instead of indirect grilling it, I direct. And if you go up on my Facebook page, Stephen Reichlin, you will see this plank. The edges are flaming. The whole thing is flaming. It is so dramatic. It is so spectacular. And I got to tell you, it's the best plank salmon I ever made in my life.
I was going to say, I have a guy on my show fairly regularly, somebody I'm sure you're familiar with, a fellow author of The Grill, and up in Canada, Ted Reeder, who is widely considered to be, the master planker. And I don't think I've ever heard him say that he has gone out of his way to not soak a plank before. And inherently, as you said, this is a dry piece of wood, and you throw it on direct, and you potentially have a fire on your hands. But all in all, the flavor's good. And were there any special tips on, cooking with it so you don't go from really good to horrible very quick?
Well, one is don't turn your back on it, because when it starts to catch fire, that'll go pretty quickly. Second is when you take it off. I actually served it to my wife flaming, and it was so dramatic. But you want to put it on a cast iron platter, because that plank, if you direct grill it, it will be hot, burning, charred underside. And if you put it on a ceramic platter, you would crack it, or if you put it on a wood platter, well, you could just get more fire.
Stephen Reichlin joins us here on the show as he does the third Tuesday of every month. Some websites, again, ProjectSmoke.org and BBQBible.com. Stephen, always appreciate the time. Thanks so much for coming on. We'll talk to you again in November.
Thank you very much, Greg. You do such a great show. Can't wait to come back. Thank you.
Yeah, appreciate it. There he is, Stephen Reichlin, ladies and gentlemen. Always love to talk with Steven when we have the chance. Third Tuesday of every month guest. And yeah, so we'll do it like that again in November.
And there it is, Steven Reichlin's Visit with Greg from October 20th, 2015. Hall of Fame talk runs deep at the Barbecue Central Show. It's just part of what we do. Hope you enjoyed it. If you want to listen to this or any other episode of the Barbecue Central Show, head over to thebarbecuecentralshow.com. There's an archive tab at the top of the page. While you're there, do me a favor, subscribe to the Barbecue Central Show via podcast. Never miss an episode of this show or the Barbecue Central Show again. Thanks so much for checking it out. Until next time, I'm your host, John Solberg. I look forward to talking to you again soon.